Good afternoon, and welcome to the 37th Annual Frank Church Conference on How Democracies Survive and Thrive in the 21st Century, sponsored by the Frank Church Institute at Boise State University. My name is Garry Wenske, and I am the Executive Director of the Institute in the School of Public Service. The Institute was established to honor the achievements and to carry forward the principles of Senator Frank Church. He delivered the first lecture on War or Peace, the American Role at Boise State University in 1982. Given today's challenges to democracies around the world, conversations like these are even more important. On behalf of the Frank Church Institute Board of Directors, our thanks to Oppenheimer Companies, C. Frederick Cornforth, and Community Development, Inc., for underwriting this series on Fridays with Frank. Thanks also to Gregory Caslow and Kay Hardy, and to Parsons, Bailey, and Latimer for sponsoring the conference. This afternoon's panel will address the topic Cybersecurity and Democracy with Tom Beckwith as moderator. Tom is an international corporate consultant and former high-tech executive with several companies, including Amazon. He serves on the board of the Frank Church Institute. Welcome to the panel, and let's begin with Tom.
Thank you, Garry. Good afternoon and welcome. As Garry mentioned, my name is Tom Beckwith, and I'll be your moderator for today's panel. Our topic is the role of cybersecurity in the defense of democracy. The goal of our panel today is to understand the scope of the challenge and discuss how we are responding. We will also discuss the gap between qualified cyber workers and the millions of unfilled cyber job openings around the world. There's also a significant gap between policies designed to police all things cyber and the rapidly advancing state of the technology itself. It's my pleasure to introduce our expert panel today. Our first panelist, Zach Tudor, is the Associate Laboratory Director of Idaho National Laboratory's National and Homeland Security Directorate. The Directorate is a major U.S. center for national security technology development and demonstration. The Directorate employs over 800 scientists and engineers across $475 million in programs, supporting Department of Energy, Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, and the intelligence community. He's a member of the Commonwealth Cyber Initiative Advisory Board, Vice Chairman of the International Information System Security Certification Consortium Board of Directors. Welcome, Zach. Our next panelist, Dr. Ming Loo, is a professor of electrical and computer engineering at Boise State University. He also holds a joint appointment with Idaho National Laboratory. Currently, he's leading the effort in creating multiple cyber operations resilience curriculums, which he'll talk more about later. He believes that cybersecurity is a people, process, technology problem, not just a technical one. His favorite question is, how do we get more people into this field, and how do we widen the participation? Welcome, Ming. Rounding out our panel is Steve Feldstein. Steve is a senior fellow in Carnegie's Democracy, Conflict, and Governance program, where he focuses on issues of democracy, technology, human rights, U.S. foreign policy, and Africa policy. He previously served as an associate professor and holder of the Frank and Bethany Church Chair of Public Affairs at Boise State University. He has served as a Deputy Assistant Secretary in the U.S. Department of State, as Director of Policy at the U.S. Agency for International Development, and as counsel on the U.S. Senate Committee on Foreign Relations. Steve has a forthcoming book, The Rise of Digital Repression: How Technology is Reshaping Power, Politics, and Resistance, for publication by Oxford University Press in April next year. Welcome, Steve. Zach, I'd like to start with you today. Many Idahoans haven't heard of INL, and those who have associate it with our nuclear weapons programs. Can you help us understand the scope of the INL mission and how the Cybersecurity Center ended up in southeastern Idaho?
Oh, sure, and thanks very much, Tom. Appreciate being here. The Idaho National Lab is one of 17 Department of Energy national labs. When Secretary Perry was brand new, we were the first lab that he visited, which was very fortunate for us. But as he got to know the labs, he started calling them kind of the gems of America, the science and engineering, the impact that we have in all sorts of different areas. And as you mentioned, unfortunately, we might be associated with the nuclear weapons program, but the Idaho lab is not a weapons lab. We are the nation's lead nuclear energy laboratory, but we're also a major center for clean energy, for understanding how to use biofuels, for my directorate, working in national and homeland security. And so I think a lot of what we do, whether it's on the nuclear side or on the homeland security side or others, stems from our background. 70 years of working with civilian nuclear energy. We've had 52 reactors out at the site over time, many of which we actually tested to destruction, so that way we can understand how these reactors operate, how they fail, how materials fail, and particularly from our perspective about the computers that they use in the control systems, the protocols. So we know a lot about how they work, and that has transferred over time into a really deep understanding of how critical infrastructures, and especially the cyber physical systems that control them, operate. We feel that we're among the preeminent resources in the world for this type of expertise.
Thank you. The US election is still in the news, but maybe not for the reasons we once feared. Zach, can you share a bit about the role your team played in preparing for the election and how you think it fared?
Well, the outgoing director of the Cybersecurity agency said that this was one of the most secure elections that we've ever had. So I'll take it from them. Now, our lab does do a lot of work with DHS and with CISA, that cybersecurity agency. And for the past 2 years or so, we've been working. We've had different vendor election machines, voting machines in. We've done assessments on them, provided reports back, where we thought they might have used a little more secure practices. Some of our assessors, our risk assessors, we do critical infrastructure assessment around the nation for DHS as well, have gone and looked at several states' whole voting process, because as many people say, it's not just the machines, it's how are you protecting voter data, how are you protecting the tallies, et cetera. And so we did that as well and provided reports to both individual states and back to DHS on where we saw some common misconfigurations where people would go out and be able to make a difference immediately in the election security for their states. And I think also at the national level, DHS and others did a great job in helping states monitor the elections, working with a lot of the social media platforms that might have been vulnerable to spreading disinformation. Even those guys, they're still trying to figure it out, but they've been doing a lot better job at trying to get that disinformation out so that people can be fairly educated on the issues, on the candidates, and then go out and vote securely.
Thank you. Steve, it sounds like we avoided some of the outside interference that we were concerned about in this past election. The same can't be said for elections in other countries. Can you describe the motives and methods used by regimes like North Korea, Russia, China, and Iran to disrupt elections and interfere with their outcomes?
Great. Thank you, Tom. It's nice to be on this panel and to talk about issues that are very much a central focal point these days for all of us. So I think this is discussion is coming at a really apt moment. And I want to also echo what Zachary mentioned to you in terms of outside election interference being an issue that really didn't surface the way many were predicting that it could have. And certainly our experiences in 2016, with Russian disinformation efforts being particularly salient in terms of how they may have affected the course of voting. I think it's a credit to a lot of different actors, including many of the good civil servants in the government who have been able to kind of push back and really ensure that our elections were much more secure, despite the anxieties that we all had about what might transpire. There is a separate issue, and I think we'll get into that later when it comes to domestic disinformation, which I think was more prevalent and continues to have a really detrimental effect to our information environment and to manipulating how we organize and oversee our elections. That's a slightly separate issue, so I'm sure we can talk about that later. But let me talk a little bit about what you did reference in your question. In terms of what kind of methods or motives do some of the other large actors, I would say particularly Russia, China, and Iran are kind of the big three that our intelligence agencies have identified as those who potentially can play a disruptive role in elections. Now, I think each one is slightly separate in terms of the methods and strategies that they use. So, with China, I would say compared to Russia, it's a little bit behind when it comes to the sophistication, particularly of its disinformation efforts tied to elections. I would say, especially in the U.S., there was talk about ways the Chinese might interfere or could interfere, and I don't think we saw a lot of that manifest itself too much. But that's not to say that there aren't other contexts in which Chinese actors have interfered to a greater degree. So Taiwan, early in January of this year, held its national elections, and there was definitely an effort by Chinese state-sponsored actors, trolls, and so forth, to really put forth alternative narratives, to push a kind of pro-Chinese, narrative when it came to the elections. And actually, what was interesting is that a lot of those efforts backfired, and so, for a variety of reasons, the Taiwanese were able to see through many of these disinformation efforts, and in fact, the end result was an outcome where the President Tsai was able to win re-election with a pretty resounding victory. So, disinformation, even when attempted, doesn't always mean you're going to have a positive outcome, and I think that's something that all of us should bear in mind. I would also, mention with Russia. So while Russia was fairly inactive when it came to the U.S. elections, that's not to say that it hasn't ramped up efforts over the last several years and played a pretty negative role in a variety of different electoral processes, particularly in its sort of backyard. When you look at Ukraine, Eastern Europe, it's even tried to meddle in elections in Africa, mostly for mercenary reasons. But it's kind of expanded its efforts further afield, and I think Russia remains the preeminent disruptive actor when it comes to using these different techniques to disrupt different elections. And then finally, Iran. I think the one technique that many of us became aware about a few weeks ago was a very clumsy attempt by state-sponsored Iranian hackers to intimidate potential Democratic voters. I think in Florida and a few other states to either not vote or to only vote for Trump. But this, I don't think, necessarily had any effect. It wasn't really done at a mass scale and was quickly exposed. I think Iran is a country to generally watch, given their overall hacking abilities and their kind of desire to play more of a disruptive role. But in terms of their kind of actual kind of threat vector at the moment, I think it's a little bit less. So let me stop there for a minute. Lots to talk about on this subject.
Yeah, Zach or Ming, would you like to chime in on there?
Yeah, it is very fortunate that we didn't have that level of interference that we did in 2016. Although a lot of us may sound alarm bells, I think that actually the Congress has had several initiatives in the last 4 years that quietly led to a lot of assistance for states, for others to start beefing up the security around these things. From the media, we hear that once again there are a lot of things that were done in the last month in the background to be able to identify and counter any types of say botnets that might be trying to disrupt the voting process in different states. Bring computer networks down to slow things up, and so that was, I think, key. And it was because they had planned for it, and we were really ready to go and do that. So I think that we've learned a lot of lessons. We'll undoubtedly learn more and make the next elections even more secure.
Excellent. Ming?
I think I would like to add that general people's a lot of public awareness has increases in terms of how those social media could potentially impact or not impact. And not everything that you see on the internet or hear on the internet is real. And I think awareness has increased, so that might help.
Yep.
I want to shift gears just a little bit and move to you, Ming. We've heard worldwide, and we mentioned this, I mentioned it in my intro, there were as many as 3 million unfilled cyber jobs. We know you're constantly being asked you constantly ask the question, how do we get more people into this field? How do we widen the participation? How do you think about solving this gap?
Oh, sorry, that was my fault. Somehow, when you got too many things connected, that's a problem.
That's the Internet of Things.
It is, and everything is connected. So sorry, I was in a busy process of shutting things down. You asked me about the 3 million unfilled job. Am I correct?
So this is your passion in your area. It's getting more people into the field. It's getting additional participation. And how do you think about closing that gap, which some say could be as many as 3 million open jobs in security around the world?
Yep. Hey, Tom, I'm hoping the 3 million is true. The reason why I say that is because it may not be true. Could potentially be because we are overcounting job posting, or it could be undercounting as some agency, some are kind of like a local government, like rural Idaho, local government, who they can pay the market rate and get price out of the market. So they're not even trying to hire the professional they need. So they basically give up trying to hire someone. So, and hopefully some of the work that we are doing can help with that. So I think there are 4 things that we could do. And the one of them is we need to open it up and get more people interested. And then the second one is setting up applicable workforce education program. It's because cybersecurity is a really, some call it multidisciplinary, but it could as well be transdisciplinary. So there's something that we could do to get more people aware. And we might have to train the workforce a little differently because we have traditional discipline that may not be exactly meeting the need of the workforce. And then the third one is stackable credential. For those who have a degree and looking at switching, maybe a pursuing degree, already have the degree, we gotta have the program in place where somebody can go after a particular small certification and stack it to the way they want it to be. And maybe for example, at BSU, we have 3 minors can lead to a degree with 120 credit hours, subtracting 36 credit hour general education. Maybe seven certificate is a degree now. And also, I think also the fourth one is we also need hiring manager to not to post some crazy job description, because if you look at some of the job description out there, it is like they already have someone in mind and they are not posting to who they want. They are looking for the ideal candidate that never exists. So I think we gotta look at multiple things realistically. So the way that I've been doing and some of the work that we have been doing is we are looking at and also implementing a Cyber for All program where every single student and also out there, every single person who may not have the technical background, they might be interested in it, heard about it, they say, let me go get a taste of it. And then there is curriculum for that. And then again, we have those technical major, the STEM major, we need them to be aware, because we need them to be aware, not just being an engineer. You actually have to engineer security and also engineer security into the process. And also not just you have to plan for it, because everything that you are going to bolt on at a later time, it's just going to cost so much money, it will not be as good. And then the other one is in some way, there are a lot of those millions of jobs out there. It is related to cyber operation. You don't need an engineering degree or a science degree to be able to do that job. It is all about people, process, and technology. How do you manage that? And then and we got to be able to bring those industry cybersecurity professional into the classroom to help us educate the next generation of cyber workforce. So I think those are the things that we could do, and exposure, and create awareness to bring people more aware to it.
And Tom, and I work a lot with Ming on some different things, but workforce is obviously something that's always been interesting to me, because I've been hiring people for the last 20 years, and it's interesting. But you do mention the 3 million unfilled jobs. I do want to point people, if they can, I'm on the board of the ISC squared, the certifying body for some of the big certifications, and they did just several weeks ago come out with their workforce study. And it talks about women in the in roles, diversity, where the jobs are, both here in the U.S. and internationally. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, read that. I think sending one thing that we also, along with other professions, we need to get younger kids interested in STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, earlier, and then try and fight for our fair share of those folks as they're interested in things. But also, I also believe that we shouldn't need 3 million more people, because if we would design and engineer, build and deploy our systems more securely, we wouldn't have that same gap. So I'm hoping we can, by doing those types of things, we can shrink that workforce gap, because we're never going to hire our ways, our way out of this. We're going to have better systems that are more secure. Ming said cyber for everyone, systems that don't need a PhD to operate securely, that are made secure so that everyone can use those systems.
Zach, I'm going to stay with you here, because I want to ask you about the challenges that you face recruiting into Eastern Idaho.
Well, yeah, and especially at a national lab, we definitely look for specialists. It's one of the downsides of being at the lab, because we do a lot of outreach for high school, bachelor's degrees, et cetera. But I normally hire scientists with more experience, and so we're building programs, internships, to make pipelines, because I really want to give those opportunities. I'd say the number one element, though, is this competition. There's 3 million unfilled jobs, and we are competing with the Amazons and other national labs, universities, et cetera, et cetera. I think that the national lab, our national lab in particular, we have a very compelling mission, and we have great impact both here in the U.S. and around the world, and that's one of the selling features. I think the other thing that I found interesting is that people don't know Idaho, and as you mentioned in the first question, they may not know the lab. So I've been working with various labs and with Idaho for almost 18 years. So I've been here before. I knew what the area was like, but I know when I told someone that I was taking a job at INL, he goes, "Oh, a job that no one wants." I'm like, "Well, why do you say that?" And he goes, "Well, no one wants a job in Idaho." 6 months later, he came to visit us, and he was like, "Holy cow, this place is pretty awesome, right?" So when we can get people here, we can start really to entice them. As a matter of fact, this COVID year has kind of forced us to do even better job at virtual tours. So we've used new technologies to try and be a little bit more immersive. It's hard to really appreciate the scope of the lab, the beauty of Idaho. We have videos showing our folks out bicycling, skiing, fishing, etc. And so we try to also sell the lifestyle as well as the impact that you can have on the world. And I think the message has been going even this year with virtual hiring. We've been still keeping our own and being able to bring people in. So I think the more people know about us, we'll have a little bit more of an edge.
I want to stay with you on just one more question along those lines. Your scope is national, international. How about the relationship with the state of Idaho, and what do you feel about the responsibility of the lab?
Well, that's something that is actually pretty special here in Idaho with the Idaho National Labs. We're one of the larger employers. I think that besides that, our from the governor's office, the state legislator, our Mayor Casper in Idaho Falls are just tremendously supportive of the lab and bring us into community efforts. We try to be very good citizens of the state and of the city. So we have people from the labs on museum boards, etc. But both the legislative support that we get, the support from our universities, our professors, it's really kind of special. And I think that Idaho, the people that do know about INL, have been really supportive of what goes on here. The universities that we work with. So yeah, it's something that I think some of the other labs have kind of mentioned. It's like, yeah, people in Idaho know Idaho National Lab. If you go to Seattle and they say name an important technology company here, they'll go Microsoft, Boeing, and they're way down on the list. But people here do know INL, and it's great.
Good. I want to stay a little bit on the support and the growing support for cybersecurity and cyber operations in the state. Ming, recently, BSU President Marlene Tromp introduced the Institute for Pervasive Cybersecurity, headed by Ed Basco. How will the Institute complement your efforts?
Because Ed has been a good addition to BSU, and the thing about it is that many of our cyber education efforts started before forming the institute, before Ed joined, and Ed joined is actually the glue that put a lot of things together and glue them together. The truth is, in fact, we at some point in time we did talk about forming a center a couple of years ago, but we didn't have the right pieces at that time. Ed joining BSU really gave us that piece. And before Ed joined, we were having conversation 6 months prior to his going full-time at BSU. So understanding each other really well really helped us put things together and get things done and moving along much quicker. And also, we are trying to build many badly needed programs at breakneck speed. And also the current budget situation doesn't help. And university bureaucracy is also interesting thing too, is because university process not accustomed to getting things implemented quickly. But you know what? It's amazing. We have so many amazing things are moving forward at such a breakneck speed, and it looks like bureaucracy in some way is also adjusting to it too. So so what we have learned through this process and with the institute in place is, and then if we can get people to collaborate from a different background, ideas gets better when we contributed and participated, and idea gets better when we have in-depth discussion. So, and also I want to mention not just the institute and our extended study division has been great too. And even at this current budget situation, they have been such a great help in helping getting new cyber operation program up and running. And then also, I want to mention that as it's going to be part of the institute, and also the whole big picture is that for training the next generation of workforce to be successful, we're going to need the industry practitioner, the professional that is in the field, and that is that they are passionate about helping to train the next generation. And I have been very successful in recruiting those people to help us, and they are dedicated individuals who have full-time job and that wanted to bring their classroom, wanted to bring their experience to the classroom. And then I hope we'll continue to be successful as we bring up, there are 3 programs that are coming up in the next 8 to 9 months. One of them is BS in Cyber Operation and Resilient. The next one is MS in Cyber Operation and Resilient. And there is also 3 emphasis in MS in cybersecurity as well. So a lot of things going on. And then the Institute has been the glue that help us pull quite a few things together.
Your passion goes a long way.
Telling you, yeah, we're looking forward to working with the Institute as well. And it does remind me, I forgot one of my earlier shameless plugs that I want to get in. If there are students listening to this broadcast, please make sure that if you're in the cybersecurity area or you're interested particularly in critical infrastructure, look at INL. We have an interns job posting out there. We're trying to make decisions earlier so that we can get the interns. So please look at the INL website.
I want to add that, Zach, but thanks for bringing that up. We have a piece of work going, is really preliminary. And I am now looking to and said, how can we find an intern, and then working closely here at BSU, closely collaborating with scientists at INL, all work remotely to get things done. And how can we lead to bigger and better things?
Thank you. Steve, I don't want you to get too comfortable over there, so I'm going to bring it back to you. What do we make of the fracturing of the internet and the push by authoritarian countries like China, Russia, and Iran to uphold cyber sovereignty norms and suppress free speech and enable censorship? Does the global internet still exist? And what's the democratic consequence?
Great. Well, it's a really interesting question as we sort of think about the ways in which different countries' political interests and security interests are intersecting in cyberspace, in the technology realm. And I think there's sort of two ways to approach this question and think about it. So one of which is that, from a transnational level, you can ask yourself, to what extent are we seeing a fracturing of norms and a push by different countries, particularly those who have a natural inclination to be more authoritarian in their approach, to band together and to push back against what have otherwise been commonly accepted principles of a free and open internet. And so you see, this idea of a cyber sovereignty agenda, which for those who haven't kind of followed the debate closely, is essentially the idea that every country has the authority and the ability to regulate how the internet is run within its own confines, whether for public order reasons, national security reasons, or so forth. And that rather than having overarching principles that guarantee certain base levels of protections when it comes to how you would practice free speech online, and to what extent state interference would be circumscribed, the idea of a cyber sovereignty agenda is that it really is up to countries to dictate their own rules, just as they would dictate their own rules when it comes to certain aspects in the physical world, like in terms of traffic flow or in terms of criminal procedure or so forth. Now, the problem with this is that then a cyber sovereignty agenda ends up being a thinly veiled proxy for these countries to suppress the internet, to suppress free speech, to block apps where there might be opposition challengers at will. And so it's no surprise, it's no coincidence that the countries that are most seized up and active in terms of pushing this agenda also happen to be countries with the worst human rights records in the world, such as China, Russia, Iran, and others of that ilk. So on that kind of broader level, that's kind of one way to think about it. I think a second way to think about the fracturing of the internet also is that, notwithstanding the fact that not everyone has accepted that cyber sovereignty is a legitimate term, many of these countries, China being the kind of forerunner, but Russia, Iran, and others have already taken steps to essentially create parallel digital ecosystems. So, I think most people are familiar with China's, the Great Firewall in China, which has essentially allowed for a completely new ecosystem of applications that are Chinese oriented, that allow for direct control, censorship, blocking, and surveillance by the state. This started about 10 years ago when they blocked Google, Facebook, and other US-based apps from operating in the country if they weren't going to accept their rules. This already is something then that's very well established. In Iran, you're seeing something also where they call it the halal net. It's essentially a national internet that allows people to stay online in the country even when the government severs contact to outside entities. So, for example, when there's unrest, when there are riots or so forth, and the Iranian government says, wait a second, we can't afford to allow people to communicate over messaging apps. We need to close this down. We need to shut down the internet. This allows them to sort of cut off international access or make it difficult while still allowing other types of internal communications for commerce and so forth to continue. Russia is also pursuing a similar kind of idea, but this really, I think, points to a very troubling and ominous direction in which countries that are authoritarian are really breaking up an idea that I think from its inception was meant to connect people in universal ways around the world. And so I think as we continue to sort of move ahead and look at these trends, I think we should all be very concerned that the promise of kind of this broader based way that we can communicate beyond country barriers is in fact looking like it's closing down a bit, or certainly fracturing. So let me stop there.
So an interesting, an audience question has come in, and I think that it ties into this. Governments are requiring companies to put backdoors into their encryption software. Where do we draw the line between personal privacy and greater good? And I think this is one that everyone will want to chime in on, and it is that fine line that we walk, and personal privacy.
Yeah, Steve, assuming you wanna go first, or
I'll let you go first, Zach.
no? So and it's like, you know, some countries are requiring it, some countries are asking, others are very adamantly opposed to that. And I think that the companies themselves do as much as they can to avoid those backdoors. And almost the same question about the fracturing of the internet. You know, that line between, you know, privacy and say national security, you know, might be different for different you know, people. Even in democratic you know, countries, you know, they have different ideas of privacy. But you know, me personally, I think that intentional backdoors, you know, are you know, maybe a slippery slope. But of course, you know, I'm a cyber researcher. I like to find those unintentional backdoors, right? But you know, so you know, at the same time, I know that there are some, you know, folks, maybe leaders or legislators, who are very concerned about the rise in say private cryptography, right? So a lot of the different applications that allow citizens with a concern for privacy, but it also allows criminals with a concern for secrecy to be able to use as well. So I think that just in many other areas that you know, law enforcement will adapt in ways that are still constitutional, and now I'm talking the U.S., but similarly in other countries, right? You know, whatever their norms are, I think that law enforcement will have to adapt to the different technologies. I mean, telephones, you know, were a big problem for them for a while. You know, that's easier now. I'm sure. I used to always talk about that every great technology has then been used for ill gain. So, you know, whether it was the railroad, the telegraph, the automobile, like, yeah, you can get from place to place, but you can always escape faster, right? So, you know, we just have to make sure that we understand where some of those limits of technology are, and keep moving forward.
Hey, I want to continue on the trend that Zach going on, and I also what Steve brought up. It's the fragmentation. You know, it's like a big country with 1 billion people like India, and they say that it is kind of a different type of fragmentation. Is we want our people's data to stay within the boundary of the country. You know, internet started with no boundary at all, and now all different country, whether it's a totalitarian or democracy, they want to say that our data should stay within the country. And one of the region of the world that is really aggressive in doing this could as well be the European, you know, the GDPR. GDPR stands for General Data Protection Regulation. And it is a law that I believe it was in 2016, and a law on data protection and privacy in the European Union. And it also addresses the transfer of personal data outside of EU too. So, but I think I've even gotten more cynical as times go, or maybe as I get older, is because I don't think backdoor work, but there's going to have some balance in terms of privacy and the greater good. You know, why is if you ask the question, why is Google giving away services for free? You know, and why is there a free Android smartphone OS? It's all about collecting data, because those big company, the big company needs your data. Your data is their business, and their business model depends on your data. And self-regulation doesn't work. So what is the balance? There have to be some balance. And also, if you talk to me long enough, and you probably will find out pretty quickly that I had process in a way that I have regulation, but they're going to have to be a balance on this. And who will bring in the balance? If you look at Apple, right? Apple might be trying to sell you that they are all privacy, but look at it carefully and follow the money. And if you look at it cynically, and Apple actually also, like Amazon, wanted to own everything. And then, because if you think about, and then go back to that fragmentation thing, is the India, when they say that we want our data to stay within a country, and what Amazon did, I believe Amazon just invests another $1 billion on data center in India alone. Isn't it big? When you have 1 billion people to swing around, you got some weight to throw around.
Yeah, I would, I would add that, in some ways, I think Sin-Ming and Zachary are right. I think I'm less focused on the backdoor issue as opposed to kind of broader surveillance ecosystem that has, that has developed both in the commercial realm in terms of, the corporate surveillance model that very much powers how, the Googles, Facebooks, Twitters, and many other platforms around the world are actually able to make revenue by harvesting personal data as one. Combined with the fact that there are a myriad of ways, new ways, as well as existing ways that governments are able to harvest data through social media monitoring, more targeted techniques, and so forth that don't involve backdoors, but are kind of equally intrusive in terms of siphoning in personal data that ought to be protected to some degree. And I think what I would sort of fall back on is the idea of trying to set common rules of the road and minimal protections and standards that can at least be a starting point and a baseline for providing the type of protections that people deserve to have. Right now, without having any kind of uniform privacy policy at all in the United States in particular, I think this sort of allows for and enables a race to the bottom when it comes to accessing and surveilling user data. There really is very little in terms of guardrails when it comes to what is acceptable and what isn't. And I think to me, it's highly irresponsible that, from a government perspective, we haven't been able to get our act together and come up with a framework that can help to push back on that. So hopefully that is something that I know a lot of people are talking about, and there's been increasing action in other jurisdictions, particularly in the EU, to try to regulate that a little better. Hopefully we can see the same thing happen in the US context.
One thing, Tom, if I can just hit this one last time, and something I'm sure Steve will appreciate. Laws, treaties, treaties especially take so long to develop, consensus among countries, et cetera. So much slower than the tech that is now coming out here. So there's so many different conventions around the world that working on, say, the law of information conflict. When is a denial of service attack from one country on another just a nuisance or an act of war? By the time they get that definition, denial of service will be gone, and we'll be working on the next type of technology. So we have to also find ways to let our international treaties, our local laws, et cetera, to try to catch up and probably never get ahead of the technology, because otherwise you kind of stifle innovation at the same time. So but Steve mentioned in the meantime, we're having all of these different these discontinuities and disconnects.
I'm going to come back just a little bit later and maybe reshape that question for Steve and all of our panelists. Monica Church had a question. How did all of our responses start to that question? And it started with the encryption backdoor that governments are asking companies to put into their devices and into their software, their encryption software. And what caused with our panelists is to take off on everything from the gap between our current policies and the technology, going much greater into social media, and so it launched into a number of different facets. But hopefully that helps the class a little bit as they're following this along. And we're going to spend a little bit more time on that as well. We had another audience question, and I'm going to paraphrase it just a little bit. And Zach, you may want to lead on this one, and Steve, you as well. But it's at a fairly high level. But it's how should the U.S. counter competitors like China and Russia, who possess significant cyber capabilities that threaten the U.S., what kind of threats do they specifically pose? And we've touched on this on a number of the questions and comments, but I do think it's what are our capabilities, and how do we muster them against these very large entities like China and Russia?
And we can probably get into cyber norms, just continuing from before, and Stephen probably will. I think that once again, making our systems more secure and less vulnerable is a start. You've seen also over the last several years, maybe once a year or so, we see that we're actually investigating and indicting foreign actors who have been attacking our systems. We may not have the opportunity to extradite them and bring them here. 3 officers from the Russian GRU, several Chinese intelligence operatives were indicted several years ago. But I think just letting bad actors, countries, et cetera, know that we're not just saying, oh, gee, they attacked us and you're going in a corner and crying. But it's a global race. Once again, different cultures have different norms about what's acceptable than what we feel here. So we can just continue to increase our capability, make ourselves less vulnerable. Sin-Ming mentioned resilience before. We can have a long talk about resilience, but that really means to be able to quickly identify when you're being attacked, minimize whatever the impact is, and then rapidly restore. And so we have to be more resilient in all of our infrastructures, our data infrastructures being one of them.
Yeah, I would also add, I think ultimately, especially as I think we've moved very quickly when it comes to understanding and comprehending the sort of threat potential of cyber weapons, and what has become what was initially something a decade ago that seemed fairly abstract, or seemed that it was fairly remote that a country could really hurt or threaten our critical infrastructure. I think there's a widespread recognition that the impact of these tools can be just as destructive as the ability of conventional weapons, particularly if you're looking at cyber attacks that cripple, electricity grid, take hospitals down, so forth like that, right? I mean, the real world consequences of those are serious and very real. And so I think, what that leads us to is, I think we need to have the creation of a more reliable and understandable cyber deterrence framework, right? Where the penalty or the reaction or punishment to those actors who undertake commit certain acts in the cyber realm against critical infrastructure in the U.S. That the reciprocal action is understood. It's a threat that will be carried out if necessary, and so that you have kind of clear rules in terms of how what the ecosystem looks like and what the expectations are for undertaking certain types of attacks. Now, there's always problems with attribution, right, in terms of who is actually doing it, and can you trace that back to a particular state or whatnot. But I think that's overcomable. Maybe Sin-Ming or Zach could talk a little more about to what extent that remains a problem. But my general thought is that just as we have norms that guide our own behavior and kind of when it comes to the use of weapons and what constitutes an act of war or not, I think developing a similar type of coherence in the cyber realm probably is something that would be beneficial.
I would like to comment on what Steve just said, and in some cases, it actually is very challenging to prove who actually did it. Okay, you might think who did it, but because the burden of proof sometimes is so difficult to find, it is not like somebody launched a nuclear weapon from some base. You know that. But where the cyber attack actually originated is technically can be very challenging to find. In the proof may not exist.
And one thing Steve mentioned, treaties, the impetus for countries to come together, historically has normally only happened after something bad. So the use of mustard gas in World War I or whatever, trying to get people to agree not to do things in advance. We haven't proven ourselves to be that foresightful internationally. So,
thanks all. We have an interesting question from the audience, and it comes back to the fracturing of the internet discussion that we were having. But this one throws a little bit of a wrinkle into it, and it has to do with some of the new technologies out there. But the question is, how do you see global satellite-based internet providers like SpaceX's Starlink Amazon's Project Kuiper, and I would also throw in there Google's Project Loon, which is balloons suspending internet services. How do we think about that in terms of this fracturing when they're available over China, over Russia? I'm not sure how to put it any more pointedly, but maybe one of you could help me out with it.
Yeah, well, I can start. It's kind of funny. So I think that you're not going to fly U.S. balloons over China. I mean, they'll be able to destroy those. But I think there's other technologies. Once again, that states that are more authoritarian can try to limit or ban to be able to access those devices. But I think, as we say, people who love freedom and want free information, find ways to get those things. But it's all part of the really interesting commercialization and sometimes militarization of space. If China really doesn't want that U.S.-based satellite system with free access to unfiltered information, they'll find ways to disrupt it, and then we'll try to counter it. So it's an interesting problem. I'm just very happy about those same satellite systems to be able to provide internet to underserved areas, whether it's here in the U.S. or in Africa or in Asia, because a lot of that data does drive education, drives commerce, and hopefully those countries will see the benefits as opposed to some of the detriments.
I would like to go on the line of what Zach just said. A few years ago, I'm not sure whether you guys remember reading or watched this. A few years ago, China showed that they can take down a satellite however they want. You guys remember that? Okay. Maybe this can happen more often now. But I think it'll be cool. I think that would be so cool. But you know what? Even however countries trying to control commerce, a black market will take care of itself. Those transceiver is going to get into the hands of people who want them, who need them, and who are willing to buy them and has the resources to get them. So I think it will happen. And then unfiltered internet is going to show up in even more places. I think it's wonderful.
One thing also that I think is kind of represents the future where things are going is that you see it in areas where there's a lot of constraint when it comes to accessing the internet, and there's a lot of ability of governments to kind of censor and block. And so a good example that we saw recently is the situation in Belarus, where actually using U.S. technology, deep packet inspection technology via U.S. company Sandvine, the government was using that to block access to Facebook and other types of kind of more accessible programs, platforms via the internet. However, what activists there, activists in Hong Kong, activists in other locations have been using instead are encrypted applications, particularly Telegram and Signal. And so you see that even when governments have become more sophisticated when it comes to blocking access to the open internet, activists and opposition challengers are finding other ways to get around that. And currently, these types of protected apps provide a lot of promise in terms of allowing people, particularly in pretty tough circumstances where there's a large repressive effort by the government to break the back of demonstrations, to organize and find ways to mobilize in spite of these obstacles. And so, I don't know if Telegram and Signal will still be the method of choice in a decade or 5 years. Probably there will be, maybe quantum computing will help break the power of at least those types of encrypted apps. Maybe something else will. But I think there is a iterative innovation flow that does happen. And so even when we become pessimistic about the ability of one type of platform or one type of structure to allow for unfettered access, other alternatives do emerge.
Thanks, all. We have an interesting question in from the audience, and I think that it actually applies to all three of you, given the fact that you're not private companies. But the question came in: for students or recent graduates, what are the benefits and differentiators for them pursuing a career at INL or other public sector cybersecurity roles over private sector opportunities like in the West Coast tech companies? And this comes back to the competition, but I'm curious as to how you guys would differentiate to get that top talent.
Yeah. Well, you know, I say it's kind of the difference between being a school teacher or an accountant. You know, number one, it's where is your passion, right? You know, where are your skills best used? I mean, I know we definitely, and every now and then we'll lose someone from the lab to Amazon or somewhere else, but just as often we'll get people from West Coast companies who kind of get tired of that type of competition, you know, writing algorithms for someone else's money and want to come back and have their own impact and work, you know, in a nice environment, you know, for a decent salary for the public good. So there are challenges, I think, in all those jobs. And so, you know, I don't want to say that working at a national lab or, you know, or what they call FFRDC is one of the research and development centers that are inside of either universities or others that do work, you know, for the national interest. But you know, it's if you enjoy that, then that's what you should do. But yeah, we have very challenging, rewarding careers here, just as those other places do as well. But we don't have the smog and the earthquakes and the.
Wow, Zach, there's a super volcano in the backyard. No, that's exactly what I tell students is where your passion lie. And even if, let's say, you gotta know that your first job does not define you. Your first internship doesn't define you. And the goal in life is find out where your interest is and where potentially your heart takes you. You know, your brain might tell you something, you know, listen to your heart and what you feel about it. And what is it that you want to get into? But then coming down in terms of stability of life in general, if you're talking about working for government and university could as well be a bit more stable, but the pay may not be as good. But in some lab job, the pay are pretty damn good, and I know. And and the in terms of working for a private sector, you might be working on the latest and greatest, and you build today and you deploy tomorrow. But there are some disadvantages to that too. You know, it's kind of like if you look at NASA. NASA is always build, and set it on the shelf and test, and you may not launch in the next 5 years. Why does a lot of NASA employee end up with SpaceX? Because they get to build and launch, and that's what's so exciting.
Just let me just say one thing as well. You know, I've spent my career either working for government, working at a university. Currently, I'm at a think tank. So I haven't worked in the private sector yet. I've had some opportunities. I can't say in the future I won't try, but it hasn't really been something that's been a motivating factor for me. And I think it's something that, you know, both Sin Ming and Zach mentioned, you know, the sense of purpose, you know, working in the public interest is a really powerful thing. It's a really powerful, motivating thing. I mean, the first thing I did, the choice I made is I turned down a pretty big law firm salary coming right out of law school for peanuts to go in the federal government. And I've never regretted that. You know, I've had a chance to really be a part of some amazing things, some incredibly interesting policy opportunities. And you know, I think waking up, you can't underestimate the power of waking up every day, being energized and motivated to do something you believe in. I don't think you can put a price on that. So that would be my answer. You know, and maybe you can find that, and I'm sure you can in certain private sector companies, but you should ask yourself that question. Where is your real internal motivation? What do you anticipate when you look at a couple of different job opportunities, working at a national lab, working at a tech company, where you'll want to put in the hours willingly because you care? I mean, that to me should be a first order litmus test.
Hey, and Tom, I just want to, you know, do a quick answer to one of the internship questions. It was like, you know, what does an internship, you know, at INL look like? Well, you know, depending on where you are in your education, how junior, senior, et cetera, you know, which technologies you're interested in. But you know, God, just in Homeland Security, I have people doing nuclear forensics, developing isotopes for new medicines. We make the armor for the Abrams tank. I've got people doing the interdependency analysis for critical infrastructures, so mathematicians, statisticians. We work on risk assessments for infrastructures, and we find mitigations for cyber vulnerabilities. So you get a chance to work with a researcher, in one of those areas for 8 weeks, and hopefully, number one, all the interns really give us energy. And the virtual year was tougher. But God, when it's like the intern orientation days, we're all like, hey, okay, this is great, and we get asked questions that the PhDs, just wow, that's a good question. We hadn't thought of that, so we learn a lot of things as well. And once again, internships around the state, around the country, they're all valuable. So I'm looking forward to maybe seeing you or hearing that you went somewhere else for a great internship as well.
Tom, can I add something to that quickly?
Please.
The INL internship, if you're an undergrad student, there are opportunity there, and they are all posted on the website. And if you have connection into like professor and also some of the scientists there, that's even better. And there is also internship for a grad student at the MS level and PhD level, and like close to a Fulbright scholarship type of level where you are being paid a stipend, and you go work shoulder to shoulder with a scientist and engineer right there in the lab, exactly like an employee.
Thanks, Ming. I want to switch to a topic that's it's on some of our minds, and I think that there's a lot of thought and work that's going into it, but much of the national infrastructure is aging. What role does INL play in when it comes to protecting the power grid and our water systems? And I wouldn't limit that to INL. I would pose that to everyone, because we have a lot of disparate, some ancient systems out there. Many of them are connected. Zach, do you want to take a whack at that one?
Yeah, I'll start because that is my passion. So I started out in technology as a computer technician, and then went into enterprise IT. And about a little over 20 years ago, I said, there's really great challenges in critical infrastructure, and I'd like to learn more about that. So that's what I've been doing for like the last 20 years. And once again, that's why I had been working with INL and some of the other labs for a long time, because I was there at the first or second year that the Department of Homeland Security started, and we were developing programs to help asset owners, the infrastructure owners, states and municipalities, and the U.S. itself understand the technology, create policies, and everything there. So, one key feature at the Idaho National Lab is we have a test grid that's kind of unmatched in the private sector. 110 miles of electric grid that we can use for testing, multiple substations, test pads. We recently had a wonderful infusion of money from the Department of Energy to put fiber optic connections between all of the pads and our research campus in Idaho Falls to be able to take rapid and complete measurements of different types of experiments that we might do on the grid. We work with utilities to help test their new energy management systems, their control systems. We work with the vendors to help identify vulnerabilities and then write best practices documents for the government to then give back to once again the states and those vendors. So we work in all those areas. Once again, the types of research that we do, when you can help someone respond more quickly to a power outage, learn from it, and then you see, Florida is a great example. 10 years ago when a hurricane hit, the exposed infrastructure was very vulnerable. We worked with them after. They developed new mitigations, and during the hurricane season now, there have been no major outages in those areas because of a lot of the things that we've all learned, and university researchers like Ming, et cetera. So yeah, it's ongoing. One of the other things I'll just say, the interesting thing now is as we're bringing on the new technologies that are still reliant on kind of that more legacy grid, and we know that it's in a lot of those interfaces and interconnections where a lot of vulnerabilities lie also. So we help people understand how to deploy new technology safely as well.
I want to comment and add something to that. It's called a gap is not a solution to everything, but the truth is this: there are certain things should not be connected to the internet. Period. Get it off. Have you guys ever hear that a year ago there is something called a Nike Bluetooth control cell lace shoe? You can control the lacing of your shoe from your smartphone. Isn't it funny? Kids might not know how to lace a shoe if their smartphone misbehave. We don't need that. We don't need everything to be connected. That's the truth. And then the thing is now digital technology in terms of we are moving a lot of those regular networking equipment that was designed for business purposes and moving a lot of those into the industrial control or industrial control system and just move it right there sometime without thinking or looking at what kind of problem is that going to cause. It's all come back down to risk assessment, risk management, and digital technology has been good for our daily life. And maybe less of that on the critical infrastructure is a good thing.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And we have talked about a couple of years ago, Senator Risch and Senator King from Maine, I guess, passed a bill, and they called it Back to the Future. People kind of misread it and said that we were trying to dumb down the smart grid. But really what it was all about was what Sin Ming said. You don't need a general purpose computer with all of its big capabilities, but also big attack surface, as we like to call it, to do one function at a substation, right? So what they wanted to do was, if you only need a resistor, don't put a computer. And I think that's what we have to remember to get back to.
Well, it took a while for the question to come in, but we do have a 5G technology question. And this one's a little bit interesting. With 5G technology emerging, key worldwide infrastructure companies that sell technologies which are part of the cellular ecosystem, base stations, mobile services, network monitoring, come from the US, China, and Europe. What are your thoughts about companies like Cisco, Nokia, Ericsson, Huawei selling their products across their own national borders? And I'm sure that Huawei is the manufacturer that jumps out there, but I'd be interested in your thoughts on that.
Yeah, Huawei, ZTE. So I guess that's one thing I haven't mentioned. We do have a wireless test bed out at the lab. Just because of the geography, we have 890 square miles out in the desert there, and it's kind of built in an old caldera from a not so super volcano, right? And so it has a very low noise floor. We were able to test things, and we have 2G, 3G, 4G, and we're now getting sponsored. We had some small 5G equipment. We're getting more vendor class 5G. But on one level, I looked at that. Well, of course, it's an international marketplace. Companies should be allowed to sell their products across, whether it's competing on price or features or national origin. I think the concern that the U.S. has had is from your question before. Some countries are requiring their companies to put backdoors into their technologies, and we think that that's not a good way to build your communications infrastructure. But yeah, some of the others that they mentioned, Nokia, Ericsson, we use them all across the U.S. We can't test them all, but we'll have one representative 5G system out here at the lab to be able to test security features, because that's really what we're not going to test every wireless system, but we're going to test the standard itself to make sure that we can understand the security, and once again make recommendations on how to deploy it successfully or how to configure it so that those vulnerabilities aren't there. But yeah, I think it's fair for the world market to operate in the world, but it's that fairness. How do we build the secure technology? And like I said, when a competitor is purposely tainting their equipment, then I think it's fair to tell people not to buy them.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question, because especially in the policy community, I think there's a pretty strong consensus that Huawei and ZTE dominating 5G technology is a bad thing for U.S. interests worldwide. And yet some will push back and say, well, where's the proof? Where's the evidence? A lot of it's speculative. There is a law that says maybe the Chinese government could do X or Y when it comes to putting in place backdoors and other ways to compromise security infrastructure, but that we actually haven't seen that happen, at least for the most part. But I think it comes down to trust, right? I think it comes down to kind of basic levels of, do you trust an authoritarian government who puts its own interests, political interests, ahead of everything else, that when the opportunity came, or the moment came, or a crisis came for them to do to make compromises with its companies or the company's technologies, that they wouldn't pull the trigger on that if necessary? And that, in comparison with a democracy, you have more checks and balances, you have more accountability, you have more transparency, you can know more. The other issue too is that, just as Zach mentioned, there are a lot of questions about to what extent Huawei and ZTE are truly private companies, or companies with boards that are controlled by the CCP or other financing that directly comes in large part from the government. A lot of it's opaque. I've read some papers that tries to kind of pierce beneath the corporate structure and veil, and to get at who exactly controls what. And that's part of the problem. You have a lack of transparency in terms of how companies are run, who makes the decisions, to what extent there is a way to push back and appeal certain regulations. So of course, and you have a pattern of bad behavior when it comes to violations that are occurring right now when it comes to digital technology. So of course, there's a natural and I think very logical pushback that democracies are going to have when they say, wait a second, how can we trust what Huawei or ZTE will put forth when it comes to 5G?
I personally think that competition is a great thing. It leads to better things and potentially be cheaper things. But then again, I need to put it out there too, is I'm not from China. I'm originally from a little country in Southeast Asia, but I can speak Mandarin, Malay, English, a couple other dialects. And I can tell you a banana story that you're probably going to laugh your bottom off if I ever tell you that. But the thing is this, lack of proof does not mean that it could not happen. The reason is this, the code base for all these devices are so big. The code base is big to a point that there could be something get put on this particular file and another 3 pieces of thing got put in 3 different places. Only a really specific change or event and sequences can trigger it. You never be able to test for that. So we do not know. So it comes back down to exactly what Steve said. Who do you trust?
Great. So before we get to the last question of the day, I just want to check to see if we've covered a lot of ground. We've covered a lot of different topics. I think that we've kept the conversation somewhat coherent. I just want to make sure that there aren't any other comments that our panelists would like to make before we get to our last question.
Hey, if I can, I just want to follow on to something that Sen Ming said, and Stephen might have the policy side of this. When you talked about the large code bases of a lot of these technologies, and they're closed, how do you feel about open source software and in some cases hardware now with 3D printing being able to democratize some of these technologies, right? So if everyone can see the code, and once again, everyone won't understand the code, but there'll be enough people out there who will come home from work at night and go, man, I want to go see what that new 5G protocol looks like, and then tell people, wait, no, it's broken, we have to do this, or the plans for a small router that you can 3D print at home, and everyone can see what's in it. Can that possibly help democratize the way we do things? And I guess I'll throw this to my co-panelists.
I'll go back to the exact same problem. Is some open source project, the code base has gotten so big, and even somebody could point something out. You're gonna have to put in the queue to get it fixed. But could there be other conditions that they can cause backdoor or things to be insecure? We really don't know. Is because there is only so much time that you can put in testing it. and there's no way you can catch all the corner cases. You know, the cases when something has operating at the edge of what is designed for, how is that going to behave? We really don't know. And then, so maybe the solution, this is coming from what educated as a computer engineer is, and maybe less code or less electronic, I don't know. I'm not sure about you guys. I don't like to drive a car that has too much electronics. And when I used to have an old Mercedes 1983, that was perfect. A multimeter can fix everything. Now, you know, you need a complicated OBD thing to be able to find anything. And then you have to go find expensive parts. And what is usually the thing that go wrong in your car? The electronics and sensor.
Which is why I drive a 2003 Honda Accord, and I also have a single speed bike. I can fix everything.
Yeah, I always say when the big solar flare hits, the only people that will be able to drive are the people in Havana who have the 57 Chevys.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I'd like to pose one final question, and it is an audience question, but I think it might be a fitting one to wrap up our session today. It sounds like cybersecurity is something we should all be concerned about. How can each of us contribute to a more secure cyber experience?
Who want to go first?
And Ming, I know this is a favorite for you.
You want me to go first?
Sure.
I will simplify it to three things. Sandboxing your activity. You have to sandboxing your activity. The computer that you use for your regular web surfing, or the smartphone that you use for regular web surfing, it should not be the device that you use it to access your bank account. It is sandboxing, is compartmentalized, because if one thing get compromised, it does not impact everything. Okay, so to me, that's number one. Second thing is, you use multi-factor authentication that you can. You're gonna have to use it. Is it an extra steps for you to get to access to account? So be it. It make you safer. You know, it's a simple thing. And then the last one is, don't reuse password, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or password 1, 2, 3. And if you are a Bronco fan, you know, Bronco fan, it is not a good password. And this is really cool thing. If you go internet and by the way, don't put your password in some website to check the strength of password. You never know who is harvesting your password too. But you can download a file, a TXT file, a text file that has millions and millions of passwords. And if your password is in that file, it's a bad password. And then usually it's a phrases that you can combine it, and that will probably be a better password. And I have something against the password manager, and maybe it is good, but I think password manager has one point of failure. So it's about building a layer of defense. When somebody get into one thing, it does not get into everything. And it's kind of like a Swiss cheese approach. And you know, you got a bunch of hole in a lot of your technique, but hopefully they don't line up. And then, but if it lined up, at least you have different defenses, and hopefully it'll work out okay.
Yeah, you know, one of the audience members, said, yeah, how do we sandbox? So we're, somewhat professionals here. I don't do it well. I don't do all those things. I have good passwords. But it's unfortunate that individual users have to be, that knowledgeable about security. But it's the truth. Whether someone is sending you an email that's spam, or trying to, steal your identity, because of the restaurant you ate at yesterday, someone skimmed your card. All of these uses of technology have made us, need to be more aware. I'll make one more plug for ISC Squared. We do have an affiliated nonprofit called the Center for Cyber Safety and Education. Has a lot of educational materials, but not only for children, ideas for internships for students, etc. But also those of us who are citizens, right? How do we protect our passwords? How do we protect ourselves from identity theft, etc.? So it's a good place to start to understand, some of the things that we don't know. I went back to, one of the answers I had earlier. We need to start making systems that don't require a PhD to operate securely. So that way citizens can feel confident, when they use the system that, well, gee, did I use a bit, good enough password? Did I, not send an email unencrypted, et cetera? We need to be able to do that. And someone asked me, it's the Center for Cyber Safety and Education. I'll write it in the chat, and from ISC Squared.
Thanks, Zach. Steve?
I have just 2 points to kind of make on cybersecurity. So one is that I think we could all benefit from having greater awareness, particularly of how our data is used, in ways that we can heighten the privacy controls about how different platforms are able to access our personal data, and how internet browsers and other programs that we rely upon on a daily basis are able to see certain parts of information that maybe they ought not to. And there's a number of ways, they call it sort of detoxifying your online presence, your digital life. That's something that I've kind of taken steps to do. But essentially, it's a way to kind of give yourself control to a higher degree of your own data. And I think that's something that's really important. Personal awareness and the right kind of habit starts with actually knowing how others use your information. So I think that's something that all of us, it's a small step that all of us can take. Think about the next time, do you really want Facebook to have your phone number and your birthday? To you, it might seem like innocuous information, but it gives a whole lot of data points that it's then exploitable and frankly is sold, commodified by Facebook or by Google to others. So these are these small kind of steps that you can take to really protect yourself. The other point I want to quickly make is that I think we generally think of cybersecurity and in sort of how do we combat actors who would exploit technical vulnerabilities that compromise infrastructure or alter computer software hardware to accomplish a goal outside of a creator's original objective. And I standard understanding of what cybersecurity is. I also think it's important to think about the idea of information distortion being something else that we should be aware of, that also gets at the idea of undermining the integrity and security of our democracy. So if you think about what disinformation is, which is essentially the deliberately false or misleading narratives often undertaken in pursuit of a particular end goal, whether it's political or some other objective. I mean, what this ends up doing is, just as you have a corrupting of infrastructure through cyber attacks, you have a corruption of our digital information environment through the willful propagation of this type of false and misleading info. And so I would also put that out as something that should be part of our broader overall approach when we think about what it means to have integrity when it comes to cybersecurity. Let's also think about the information side as well.
All right. Steve, Sin Ming, Zach, great discussion today. You in the audience, I hope that this stimulates some conversation. And again, I thank all three of you and appreciate it. With that, we'll wrap the session up. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you all. Thanks, Tom.
I just wanted to close closing remarks. These sessions will be recorded and posted on the Frank Church Institute social media page. We encourage everyone to share the videos and keep the conversation going. If you enjoyed this program and are able, we encourage you to consider making a contribution to the Frank Church Institute by going to our website. Your support helps us produce future programs like this one. So thanks all.